Today's episode was recorded at the Church Street Boxing Gym in New York City on May 10th, 2025. Please be sure to check out our other episodes, including one with Rufus de Sol on the science behind breathwork practice. Don't forget to click subscribe, and please rate the show on your favorite podcast platform. This is Sing for Science Labs. I'm your host, Matt White. Each episode in this series brings together artists and scientists to explore one topic of shared interest. Today's topic is fitness science, and our guests are UK superstar Yungblud and exercise scientist Dr. Brad Schoenfeld. The artist behind Yungblud is British musician and cultural firebrand Dominic Harrison. Known for his explosive live performance, punk rock sensibility, and hard partying lifestyle, Dom has recently made major changes aimed at improving his health and increasing longevity by taking up boxing as a form of exercise. Dom credits boxing with providing him a path towards a profound transformation both in body and mind. Dr. Brad Schoenfeld is a professor at Lehman College in the Bronx, where he serves as the director of the Human Performance and Fitness Program. Widely regarded as one of the world's leading experts on strength training, he has an enormous social media following and has authored more than 300 published articles. A pioneer in evidence-based training, Brad is one of the most recognized voices in the field of fitness science. Hello, Dom and Brad.
Hello.
Welcome to Sing for Science.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
So you've got 4 records under your belt now.
I have, yeah.
And you've probably done 400 interviews at least promoting them.
Yes.
Is this the first where you just talk boxing and fitness?
Do you know what it is? And I'm actually quite excited about it.
What an honor.
I know, what an honor. I'm down, I'm in a ring.
Yeah.
No, it's a radio station.
Okay, no,
so
forget it.
I'm happy to be here with you lads.
So what's the story? How'd you end up in boxing?
I used to do it a little bit as a kid, but then and I've always loved like watching it. And I really feel like I got into a little bit of a strange cycle on the road. You know, I felt like I wasn't very happy, and I wasn't dealing with my emotions as well as I could do. And I remember literally being in New York, and my mate was like, "Why don't you come boxing today for fun?" And it just kind of intrigued me. And I met a guy called Pete Berg. You know, the film producer Pete Berg.
Okay.
And he said he's got a boxing gym in LA, and I was going to LA to do like a month stint. And then he says, "Why don't you come to my boxing gym?" It's a British boxing gym, and I met a guy called Chris Van Heerden, who is he's a ex-welterweight champion, and he's South African. And honestly, I just kind of, about 18 months ago, I found him, and he really helped me navigate what I was going through and kind of really allow myself to channel. I've got like such a lot of energy and like aggression that I think if I don't put it somewhere, it kind of becomes like a, do you know what I mean? Like a simmering pan that's kind of like out of control.
So it helps dissipate?
Yeah, it allows me to kind of be a lot more focused. Like I've got ADHD, and I've always struggled kind of putting my nervous energy somewhere, you know what I mean? So I channeled it into music. But I feel like when you're a musician or when you're an artist, like I feel like I've been quite polarizing for people, and I've found it really hard to deal with, like reading people's opinions about me. So I think like I didn't know where to put it, and it was turning dark. It was going to like issues with food and issues with alcohol and stuff like that. And I really met Chris, and he kind of, he was a real like, I don't know, male role model for me to kind of, who I met like later in my like kind of life, that allowed me to put something somewhere positive, and I've just loved it. I became obsessed with it.
So can you talk a little bit about how you experienced the relationship between body and mind?
Yeah, I really think like my mind races at an incredible rate. You know, I feel like sometimes I'm trying to. It's like why I'm a bad drummer. Like, you know what I mean? Like my head is quicker than my feet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've always kind of had to kind of connect the two. I think if you watch me on stage, I'm almost awkward. You know what I mean? I think like my movements are quite sporadic and weird. So I've always had kind of an issue connecting the two sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
And I really believe, really for the first time in my life, that sport and kind of do it. It was the closest thing to being on stage, boxing.
Okay.
It was so weird. You have to kind of maintain your energy. You have to get control of your adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
You have to harness your fear.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be completely respectful, and you have to go 12 rounds, man.
Yeah.
You
So
know what I mean?
endurance is a big piece.
So you can't just blow. It's like being on stage, like in the past when I was young, I'd like run on song one, blow the tank out, and then be trying to catch up for the rest of the gig.
Yeah.
And then I kind of got a little bit more experience and realized that around song 6, at 4, 5, 6 is when you start to turn it up.
Okay.
Because everyone's just still getting used to the idea that you're on stage,
Right.
1, 2, and 3. So it's kind of the same with boxing, and like especially sparring twice a week. I really love it, man. I love it when my heartbeat kind of starts to race in any outlet. You know what I mean? I think that's why I do music. But I found another one. It was really cool.
Okay. And then, so Brad, what is to account for, it seems to me boxing is just one of these most comprehensive forms of exercise. So from a fitness scientist perspective, how do you make sense of that?
So boxing is one of the most comprehensive, I think kind of as Dom had been intimating, one of the most comprehensive activities you can do, because it involves anaerobic exercise, aerobic exercise, strength, power, muscle endurance. I mean, it really is a combination of all of these factors. And exercise in itself has been shown to have very powerful effects on the brain. So I'm not a clinical exercise scientist, I'm a performance-based scientist. So I don't really mechanistically, from an ADHD perspective, I can't speak to what specifically would be going on, but we know, I mean, there's really compelling evidence now that exercise has really profound effects on the brain, and particularly when you're doing highly physical activities like resistance training or boxing, where there's aggressive, hitting involved. It allows you to, or it forces you to focus. You're not, if you're lifting weights or if you're punching something, if you're thinking outside, you're going to miss your punch.
Oh, 100%.
And particularly if you're sparring. I know we had talked before about sparring. You're sparring, you're getting hit, and if you're thinking about
that's
something
when you
else.
really learn. That's when you really learn, because you can, if you're on the pads or if you're on the bag, or if you're kind of training with your trainer, you kind of running through combinations. But once someone's opposite you, trying to swing for you, you don't know what's coming. You don't know what's coming. You don't know. You almost prepare yourself doing combinations to be able to just freestyle. It's like stage. Like you rehearse and you rehearse and you rehearse. So when you get on stage,
You can be in a flow.
you can just have an arsenal of tools
Okay.
that you can pull from. You know what I mean? It's really cool, and it does blow my mind, the difference in my day if I don't box.
Okay. How would you describe it?
I would just say I'm probably like a lot more anxious, a little bit shorter fuse, and I overthink so much. I think part of my personality, I really lead with my gut, but then I might regret the decision I made out of truth.
Yeah.
10 minutes later.
Sure.
Whereas if I box, I feel like I'm a little bit more focused, and I don't know, I'm a little bit more like I feel like I can relinquish control a little bit and be like, I don't know, I think you wake up and you alleviate 30% of the anxiety you face when you wake up straight away. So you kind of just, I feel a lot, I feel a lot clearer.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool when you find something that you love in sport. You know what I'm saying? I just think it's been really cool to find something outside of music that I just really enjoy. Like, I'm not saying I'm going to be a pro, but I love it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really cool.
And so with sparring, this is something, I realize there's so much more to boxing than blood sport or something that's kind of just based on brute force. But when you're in there, I'm curious, because you had said that you'd needed a channel for aggression. How much of does violence enter into it? Because I know it's a lot. You talked a lot about strategy.
It's so funny. It's so unviolent.
Really?
To me, I mean, obviously, it is a. You can say that because you are trying to hit the other person, etc. But it's like you can't lose control.
Yeah.
you waste too much energy. If you like let go, you expend too much energy. You have to. It's the most focused you've ever been. It's like you're literally like carrying a baby across like a swinging bridge. You know what I mean? You have to like. It's literally the most honest conversation two people can have, really. I think. And if you kind of, like the most beautiful thing that I was kind of taught or hanging around a boxing gym, all about respect. Everyone looks at each other. Everyone says hello. Everyone like. Because you know that it's like so hard. So you know that you're in there that morning, putting yourself through hell.
Yeah, sure.
To kind of be better, and I really think like it's about learning to maintain control instead of lose control, and that's what I think is violence, when you kind of you see red, you don't see anything, and you just kind of blindly hating.
Sure.
This is using like primal and animalistic instincts to learn more about yourself. It's so weird. It's so cool.
Well, that would make sense that it translates into relief from your ADHD symptoms. You know?
Yeah, 100%.
I'd also add, and I'll ask you, so you mentioned about it making you feel more stable. And I know so for me, it was resistance training. When I got out of college, I was a twig, a 114 pounds soaking wet, and I found bodybuilding, or it found me, and it just changed my life. It changed my whole perception of self-confidence and how I felt about myself. And from your perspective, did that, like, to me, having the control that you're talking about and the physicality of being able, you can unleash your body.
Yeah, because
it's
on you. It's kind of that you force yourself to face yourself and look yourself in the eye. You know what I'm saying? If you have a problem with something internally, you can address it. I'm literally like, it's so funny, like, because I have my own festival, and I'm very much in control of my career as an artist. You know what I mean? Not really a musician who's like lets his gigs get booked for him or whatever. I really run a lot of businesses, and when you have to make decisions on the fly, or like when people would drop out a week before announcement on the festival, or I need big decisions to be made, like I need this, someone needs an answer out of me that I don't quite know yet, I'm like, I'll go to whatever time of the day, I'm going to run to the boxing gym, because it's the same what you talk about when you have these internal conversations with yourself. We don't, as humans, we kind of push them down a lot, we like hide a lot. When it hurts, we don't want to address it. And it's almost like jumping into a cold plunge. You're like, right, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do this now for this hour.
Yeah.
And it's gonna suck and it's gonna push me harder than ever, but I'm really gonna face myself. And I almost play that game with myself in my head. I'm like, right, motherfucker, we're doing this now. You know what I mean? And I think we can kind of like push it till later. I think we condition ourselves as humans to hide from that, because it feels like too much effort or too much strain, when I really I would say to anybody, if you can find an outlet within sport, and the best thing about boxing is like it's so unjudgmental. Like I always found that sometimes in the gym I was judged a little bit. What I love about boxing is everyone is there and everyone's just like, yo, like I've got like pros in the corner, and then you've got like kids in college, and then you've got like rock stars, and you've got everyone just kind of like sweating, covered in blood, just like, yo, you know what I mean? Like we're working on it, and that's what I really loved.
So it's like the opposite of a meathead kind of competitive environment.
Yeah, it's so the opposite of that where I go. You know what I mean? I think like,
look, at the end of fights, they generally hug each other.
Completely.
Like it's
even
not
after
about
all the shit talking.
Right.
After all the shit talking for entertainment, they kind
and
of
the blood and
respect.
the guts that spilled in the ring.
Yeah, like I love it. I love it.
Oh yeah, look at that.
It's always anytime.
And they end up hugging each other, and it was, I mean, they've been through a quote unquote a war together, but it's like you said, it's not violent in the mind of the boxer. It's an art, really.
So Dom has just kind of made a plug for everyone, people finding an outlet through physical exertion. And I know that your research is primarily rooted in strength training, resistance training. What's your plug for everybody being able to benefit in some way from lifting weights?
Yeah, so I would say that for the general public, lifting weights is the #1 most important thing that you can do. So I'm not dispelling or dismissing the importance of aerobic exercise or Pilates or whatever else you might want to do. There's many good, almost any form of exercise is good, but resistance training has more benefits in total than I think any other physical activity you can talk about. So it's not only, first of all, aerobic training is never going to really improve your strength to any significant effect, or your muscle quality, your muscle size. And these are really important, particularly as we get older, because you're going to lose, if you're sedentary, even if you're running, if you're doing aerobic exercise, you will start to lose gradually your muscle ability, both the capacity and the size. And that makes your, over time, that makes you functionally dependent. The reason that people go into the nursing homes is because they can't do the everyday chores of daily activities. But resistance training also will improve your cardiovascular fitness, your mental health. I mean, virtually every bodily system will be improved through resistance training. So I would say that 2 sessions per week for the average person. Now look, if you want to be a bodybuilder, you need to do a lot more. Just like if you want to be a pro boxer, you can't do a few sessions a week. But for the average individual, 2 30-minute sessions per week can get you huge benefits. We actually just published a study on this, showing that resistance-trained individuals were able to build muscle strength and muscle endurance from 2 30-minute sessions per week.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's such an emphasis on cardiovascular exercise, aerobic exercise. So that shocked me a little bit when I'd heard you say that in another interview, but also that little kids can benefit from it, and teenagers, and that it's a myth that it's going to stunt your growth if you.
Total myth.
I remember like that in school. They would never let us use the gym at like 13. They'd be like, "No, don't be doing that." I remember like I didn't know that.
It's been showed conclusively not to be true. And not only is that not true, but there's real benefits when you're younger. Now, you're not going to train the same way when you're 8 as you would when you're 20. But starting children out as early as they are mature enough to do so really can have positive effects. We talked before about the self-confidence. You're not going to be able to gain as much muscle when you're before puberty because your hormonal system hasn't developed. But strength-wise, I mean, it'll give them confidence. It gives them mental focus, like we're talking about. So huge benefits across the lifespan.
Right. So you feel probably an increased stability.
Completely. I mean, 100%. And I really just think like I just really learned a lot, and I've become a lot more present. Like I've become a better brother or son or, you know what I mean, friend, like, because I'm just a lot more present. You know, I feel like the biggest thing we face today is like actually being present in what's around us. You know, I feel like we every day, we're always looking ahead, or we compare ourselves to 15 different people before we've even had our breakfast. So I really think like we forget to actually have conversations with ourselves. It's the last person we talk to. You know what I'm saying? We get up and we see a million things, and we go about our day and we talk to everyone else, and we never actually sit somewhere and go like, how are you feeling today? What are you worried about? What are you scared about? What do you love? What do you, like, I'm telling you, most people, I'm like, what did you see today? Oh, I saw a video about this. I saw like a conversation. I read an article. No, like, no. What did you see? Did you see someone like kiss their lover across the street and like, oh, that's cute? Or did you like see someone like get a coat trapped in a door on a subway? Was that funny? Was that, you know what I'm saying? Like, what did you actually fucking see today? And I would ask myself that question, going like, shit, I don't even know. And I think that's one thing that boxing really kind of allowed me to like do, was just like, right, I'm gonna put my phone away for a second, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna like feel the air on the back of my head or back of my neck, you know what I mean? Just be like, I'm alive, you know. And I think like it's so funny we were saying that, because my guitar player, my best friend, is literally just in the past kind of year as well really started weight training heavy, like loves it, like on tour, like, because we were drinking a lot, you know what I'm saying? I think when you're in a position on tour, when you like, you kind of go into a dressing room and there's anything you want at 10 in the morning, and it's a different city every day, especially in America, because you're here for 6 weeks and you almost get over the excitement of a new place. If you're in France, Belgium, Germany, Italy, you get the excitement every day of a new culture, new food, new language. But when you're in America, you kind of like, when you hit the Midwest, you kind of like, and the excitement of, I mean, we're in America, kind of wears off a little bit. You're like, oh. So Adam really found weight training because he would say, he would like go and check into a different gym every day, and it would be different, and he would kind of, again, like come into the center of his head, as opposed to like, we crack a lager at 10 in the morning. You know what I mean? We're British, so we're just like, yeah, man, should we have a beer?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's 9 in the morning. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it was really, it's been a really interesting time for us. And what's interesting is like, there's a massive kind of movement in the UK about masculinity at the minute, and kind of young kids turn into people like Andrew Tate and shit because they have no outlet to express that, you know. And I really watched a really interesting speech by the England football manager, Gareth Southgate, about it, and I was like, I've been an advocate for a lot of people, you know what I'm saying, within my music, and I'm really trying to kind of speak for young lads at the minute, and just been like talking about my boxing and trying to find kind of a new masculinity and a respect and a newfound medium, because at the minute, like you kind of, a lot of like liberal men who were scared to stand behind masculinity out of fear of being cancelled.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's funny, the kind of men on the far right don't give a fuck about getting cancelled. So like, there's a lot of stuff on the internet that's dangerous. So that's why I'm kind of talking about like sport and boxing, because it's been a really beautiful place of like reclamation for me, and learning of respect and emotion. You know what I mean? It's been really cool. Like, honestly, like the boxers I meet are the most emotional guys I've ever met. You know what I mean? It's such an emotional thing. It's really cool.
Have you found that it's translated into better performance on stage?
100%. It's so crazy because breath control.
Right.
Like breath control has been the most mind-blowing thing for me, because when you exercise, especially when you're nervous and you're about to get hit, you're gonna hold your breath in, and you're just like, and you're tired within 30 seconds of the round. You can go and go for the like 30 seconds of the round, but you've got a long way to go. And it's just like, you've got to remember to breathe and breathe through it, like in through your nose, out through your mouth, and on every hit. Release breath, and it's been the same on stage, because when you walk out to 20,000 people, you're just like, it's so inhumane. Yeah. You know what I mean? To be like, what the fuck is going on? And you forget to. It's like it's the simplest thing. You forget to actually breathe, and maintain your heartbeat. And I always find hitting the pads before I go on stage for like because when I go on stage, my heart rate's gonna spike. Like adrenaline, crowd, the first song, you're just gonna go. Like that's been my.
Well, especially with your show.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, I love coming out with a bang, being like, whoa. And if I get my heart rate up 5 minutes before I go on, my heart rate doesn't spike as hard. Oh, interesting. So I'm not going, because if your heart rate spikes, you're spending the next 2 songs catching up to kind of get your breath under control and get your heart rate to a place of comfortability or whatever, you know what I mean? So like, I heard about Chris Martin from Coldplay having a bike backstage before he goes out in a stadium. He'll ride his exercise bike, so it spikes his heart rate, and then so like when you go on stage, you kind of your heart's already kind of taken that shock.
Is there something in your research that actually resonates with that, about the advantage of warming the body up and getting the heart rate up before?
Well, I mean, I never thought, certainly not in terms of a musical performer, but if you're going to do, let's say, heavy resistance training or any type of intense exercise, you want to always do some type of warm-up to get your body prepared for the activity. So it makes sense physiologically. It's interesting to hear, because I've never seen research showing that for a performer.
Yeah, it's so weird. I've never seen research, but I heard about Chris doing it and was like, all right, I'm gonna try that. Or jump rope. Like, what's been so sick is like jump rope. has been like, saved my life as well.
Well, it's like there's a dance to it.
There's a dance to it, and it just kind of, you can just like put some music on, zone out, and just like get that endorphin hit and get that kind of like, you feel like rubbish in the morning. Like it's like a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? It's like, just do it for 6 minutes, 2 rounds.
So I would think it also has a lot of individual variability too, like the type of mindset you have, because I do know of some performers, musical performers, who meditate before going on stage too, and find that getting into the Zen zone.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it might be, you know, inter-individual in terms of how you...
it is such an individual thing, because I find meditating really hard.
Yeah.
Because I really struggle to focus, but
Me too.
I think I almost meditate. You probably meditate when you're lifting weights.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? That's when I meditate.
Yeah.
When I'm doing that, I'm like reaching a place of like calm, or just like I almost see it as like unbuttoning every part of like the session when I go boxing. I just like, it's almost like I'm untying a knot. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it kind of gets looser and looser and looser. And by the time I leave, about an hour after I've left, like I'm completely like, my rope's like fluid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's how I
it's a
see it.
zen.
Yeah, I was just going to say, resistance training for me is meditative in a way, because you think about the way I lift, you're getting what's called a mind-muscle connection. So each time you're lifting, you're getting this connection with your muscle and thinking about it, and you're just in that zone where everything else is secondary. And all you're thinking about is trying to get the target muscle involved and maximally activated.
Can you talk a little bit about just the mechanics of the muscular skeletal system and just how it works? Because it's something that I just take for granted.
Yeah, do you know what? Like, I second that, because obviously, like, you just said that, like, next time I'm lifting and I don't want to lift anymore, I'm literally going to think about my brain being connected to my bicep or something to like keep me going. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the muscle growth process, how the...
Anything, I mean, first of all, like, why does having a bigger bicep translate to me being able to pick up a bigger rock? Well, how does protein grow muscle? Anything you want to tell me? I am a...
So I'll try to keep it somewhat simple, but there are what are called
I love
sarcomeres
this. I'm
in the
so
muscles.
excited. It's going to fascinate me.
So the muscles are made up of these small units called sarcomeres, and sarcomeres have these contractile elements that pull on each other to carry out an action. So when you're lifting a weight, you're getting all these little sarcomeres, and it kind of functions like a rowboat. It's called myosin and actin, and the myosin pulls on the actin heads, which is kind of like this rowboat where it's pulling and pulling so that you're able to lift the weight. The more contractile elements you have, the greater the muscle's capacity. So a larger muscle necessarily is going to translate to a greater force-producing capacity. If you're asking also as to how that is translated to get the growth, the mechanical signals, so when you're lifting a weight, there's mechanical stress on the muscles. The mechanical stress is then converted into chemical signals within the muscle fibers. And that ultimately leads to this chain of events where it carries out what's called muscle protein synthesis, which is the creation of new muscle proteins. And the more synthesis you can have versus breakdown. So the breakdown is kind of the other end. As you're training, there's also muscle breakdown that's happening. If you can increase synthesis over breakdown for an extended period of time, you'll have growth.
Wow.
So what
cool.
what sort of weight training would you recommend to a boxer? This one, for example.
Yeah, so that becomes a somewhat of an individual process, because you have to look at what the strengths and weaknesses of an individual are. Like you might have muscle imbalances, so I can only give general guidelines there. But as mentioned, so boxing it requires multiple qualities. It requires strength, it requires power, and also having larger muscles itself has a protective effect when you're getting hit to some extent. So now there is a trade-off there, because in boxing there are weight classes. So if you get too much muscle growth, it might take you out of your weight class and you're fighting someone that's larger. So those are considerations that have to be taken into account. But generally, I'd recommend having training for muscle endurance, which is more higher repetitions and lighter loads, because it's not just, there's obviously a lot of power, but if you're pumping out jabs, that's muscle endurance. You're not trying to maximally hit the person, you're just looking to snap that out quickly. There's also muscle power, which requires lifting very rapidly. So power is a combination of strengths. You also need to do some somewhat heavier lifting, but also some very rapid lifting. And usually that's best carried out through what we call plyometric type exercises. There's medicine ball throws, there's medicine ball slams
Lots of that,
for the
yeah.
upper body,
Do you
there's
do that?
jumps.
All of that. It was so mind-blowing to how little it's about my arms. It's all about your core, and it's all about your legs and your hips, because when you're swinging, and it's all got to come, and it's all about levels. It's so strange, and pivoting. And
What do you mean levels?
It's all about changing levels. If you're trying to hit,
your height.
If you're trying to hit someone, you've got to, like, when you're like slipping, you've got to like get it forward, and then it's all about keeping your body fluid. So it's all a lot of twisting, like medicine ball slams, medicine ball twisting, like chopping wood, big hammers, stuff like that. Because when you're throwing uppercuts and when you you roll it and you're slipping, it's so not from your arms. If you throw from your body, it's going to be a lot harder. It's almost like you got to snap your punches.
Okay.
If you throw from your arms, your shoulders are going to get tired, and you're not going to be able. You're just not going to be able to hit as hard. You've got to. It's literally like when you throw your hook, you've got to like. It's got to come from your hips and your core. You got to like literally, they say, put the cigarette out. You got to like put the cigarette out so it comes over the top, as opposed to doing that because you're off balance.
You get more speed with the.
Yeah, you just dig your body into it, and then you got. It's been so like mind blowing how you wouldn't think you just like, right, I'm going to train my arms so I can hit harder, when it's all about kind of your hips and your core, because that's how you move, change levels, remain kind of like, you know, nimble. Really, it's like the tighter and the stronger your core is in boxing. It's the first thing, like without fail, 250 crunches and 25-minute skip every time I go boxing.
250 crunches.
100%.
It's so on point because many people don't realize that your power comes from your legs, from your lower body. Obviously, you need upper body power to some extent too, but if you're, as Dom said, if you're just arm punching, you're going to have half the power.
You get so tired.
Yeah, everything really has to come from. Now, part of it is understanding how to use your lower body. But part of it also is strengthening the lower body. So squats and lunges, doing lower body exercises is just as important, if
so
not
funny,
more so than.
I hate squatting, but it's like literally it's like the fundamental kind of, I would say, like weight training that I do, like kind of like literally like get the weights on and then just like squatting and legs and core more than arms. With my boxing, it's so weird, but we'll do more like it'll be more like pull-ups and like body weight training and press-ups, really, for kind of my arms and my chest. A little bit of light weights, but heavy reps, but not I don't want to build too much. I really want to, at higher reps, really tone up. That's like that's the kind of the program that I'm on, as you said. It's been cool, but it blew my mind how not about your arms it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's when you're boxing, it's so weird.
And so how do you define muscle toning, Brad?
How do I define?
Muscle toning. If you want to tone muscle.
Well, toning is a function, so that's kind of an ambiguous term. Muscle tone often is, I think, misused because it really has to do with the quality of the muscle. But hypertrophy, so we talk about hypertrophy, which is an enlarging of the muscle. You can get any type of hypertrophy will give you tone. So tone also has to do with the lower body fat, because many people talk about seeing the muscle. If you have a lot of body fat, you're not going to be able to see it. But as mentioned, boxing is a sport that has weight classes. So you have to balance. Let's say you're at a welterweight level and your top weight class, I think is 148, something like that. If you add on too much muscle, you're going to be out of your weight. You're going up to a middleweight. Or a super welterweight, and you're not going to be able then. You're not going to have the strength and power usually to fight at that level, or it would be difficult for you to compete if you can stay at the top of your weight class. So there's always this balance, and like Dom said, it's when it comes to building muscle, that's always one of the beauties of resistance training is you can sculpt your body. You can think of yourself as a sculptor, and if you think you're gaining too much muscle, you can tone down, if you will.
That's cool.
So it's basically you have the ability to carve your body, to chisel your body like a sculptor would with a chisel.
So if you don't want to build too much muscle, but you still want to get as fit as possible and incorporate as much resistance training? Because tell me if this is a myth, but my understanding was you always want to push to failure, at least where it's a strain to complete that last repetition. So, but if you're doing that, aren't you going to always make your muscle bigger?
So a couple of things with that. That's for maximal muscle growth.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily, actually, the more recent research, our lab has published some of this as well. You need to be close to failure. You need to be pushing really hard, but you can be a couple reps short of failure, and it doesn't seem to really decrease your overall results as going to failure for several reasons. But for strength, you can be much further away from failure. And if you're asking, it's kind of somewhat of a misperception that for less growth, you generally want to use heavy loads, but don't go close. Yeah, so like low reps, doing 3 to 5 reps, staying where you could have done three more reps. You don't want to certainly go to failure. And low volumes, because volume is a driver of hypertrophy. So if you're training with heavy loads, so moderate loads, even to somewhat lighter loads, going towards failure is going to increase the size of your muscles.
How'd you figure that out?
Well, this has been researched. I didn't figure it out.
How do you perform those kinds of experiments?
So you basically use, you control, so I think that's actually a good starting point, that to study a topic, you want to manipulate the variable of interest. So let's say it's muscle growth, and we're talking about rep ranges. So light loads with high reps versus heavy loads with low reps. You control everything else. So you're going to keep the rest intervals, the frequency, anything else about the training exactly the same, the volume, the number of sets. You try to keep the nutrition the same. You try to, as much as possible, keep sleep. If you can just vary, give one group high reps and the other group heavy loads, and then measure, we would actually measure the muscle growth in an objective fashion. So we use ultrasound where you can actually see the muscle. Basically, you're putting a probe on it. And at the end, you'll do an 8, 10, 12-week study. At the end of that study, you basically look to see who grew more. And the emerging research, not only from our lab, but many others, has really consistently shown this. And the primary focus of our lab is on strength and hypertrophy. So we're carrying out these studies, and I've been doing it for 15 years now, so we have a lot of studies in the bank.
Wow.
In my mind, I'm just getting a visual from Rocky IV. Do you remember when they've got the Russian training versus Sylvester Stallone's, and Sylvester Stallone's like carrying tree logs on his back, and the Russian is covered with, I don't know if they're like EEGs or whatever, and he's like in a lab setting.
Yeah.
So were you working in the sciences when that movie came out?
No, that was in the 80s, I think. And I was not. No, I was a personal trainer at that time.
But is that a thing? Like, would a boxer who has tons of money and interest invested in them, would they have that, like that level of science going into their training? So
could you do something like, first of all, you wouldn't be trained, it was somewhat, I think, overdone, because you wouldn't need that it's not helping you to train to have EKGs, or I think that was an EMG, which he had hooked up. You might want to see certain muscles, which ones are firing better. So, I mean, if it's a high-level boxer, getting that person into a lab and saying you could do certain tests to try to determine weaknesses. But the training would be, just what we'd see wouldn't be bodybuilding training, but you do it in a basic gym. You don't need a fancy lab to carry out the training aspects, or even fancy equipment. You could do the Rocky type training would be just as good. And as Dom had said, for boxing in particular, a lot of body weight exercise, chins, push-ups, these are kind of staples of bodybuilding. I'm not saying that I think certainly resistance training can add on, depending upon, again, where your weaknesses are. There are certain limitations to body weight exercises. They're difficult to make harder or easier. You can, to a certain extent. It's also difficult to target certain muscles. So let's say you had an imbalance between your posterior deltoid, the deltoid in the back, and your front deltoid. You can target that more readily with a resistance training. So these are all more nuanced things. But overall, basic free weights can be very, very powerful.
Thank you, Hollywood. Do you have any more questions for one another before we?
I'm fascinated. I think it's epic. No,
Will you come down to New York one day? We'll get you in our lab.
I would love that. I would love to see what's going on. That would be so sick. Yeah, it was so, as I said, it was so, I'd love to kind of learn more about that. It just kind of, I really think like, even in singing, and getting my core and my arse really strong has been the most, even like the common thread as well between boxing and singing, keeping this and this like as strong as possible. Because I remember I did two ligaments in my knee when I was really young. It was crazy. I did it on stage, and I remember it was so wild because they were just literally having me train my quads and my arse and my core to
rehabilitate.
Yeah, it was just like, it was again fascinating. You know what I mean? I find it so cool. I'd love to come to your lab.
Anytime.
That would be so sick.
I'd say in kind of closing for me, a real important point to take home, like, so Dom is not looking to be a pro boxer. He's doing it for himself, for his own mind and body. As you start and for his purposes, the stuff, the high-end stuff that I would be talking about really wouldn't even resonate. If you're going to be Rocky, if you're training for a heavyweight title bout, that's when the nuance, that's where the 99th, getting that extra 1% out of your body can be the difference between winning and losing a fight. So I think as Dom has said, he's got his own regimen that's really working for him. And that, to me, for the vast majority of people, I think we're talking here, not to the Rockies or to the, Ken Nortons or Mike Tysons or whoever. We're talking to the majority of people in the world. And physical activity in itself is such an important thing. And look, I think the real issue is 80% of, certainly in the US, I'm not sure of the worldwide numbers, but I think it's pretty similar, but 80% of the people in the US are not meeting physical activity guidelines. And many, I think less than 50% are almost completely sedentary. So doing something is better than nothing. And if people are going to do it, I know time is considered a barrier. As I mentioned earlier, resistance training, even 1 hour a week, 2 half-hour sessions per week can get you huge benefits that will stay for a lifetime.
I said the same thing about jump rope. So I say to all my friends, everyone's like, I want to do cardio, I want to do some more cardio, I want to do some more cardio. I'm like, I'm telling you, get yourself a skipping rope. You can do it in your living room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's cold outside, if you've got a quick 10 minutes, just get on it.
Yeah.
Promise you'll feel so much better.
Yeah.
I always, you know what I'm saying? I fell into that crack. I was like, when am I going to have time to physically exercise? And it's so much effort. And like, honestly, it's blown my mind and changed my life. Literally.
I believe you.
I cannot stress enough how much more I enjoy living now. I
hear you, man. It's the same for me with resistance
training. It's so mind-blowing because you kind of I would always be like, it's rock and roll, I don't need to do that. We're in a rock band, we don't need to be healthy, we're in a rock band. You know what I mean? And I would kind of make an excuse about, it's rock and roll, and I promise you, as soon as I turn that corner, I'd almost face that demon and go right, we're getting up today, we're doing it, where it's happening. Yeah. I would rather have an hour less sleep.
Sure.
I'll feel better. I'm telling you.
That's awesome.
2 hours less sleep, and if you go work out,
you can undo it.
You'll feel better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I promise you.
It even improves your sleep. I mean,
it does. Because I'm terrible at sleeping. I'm really always been bad at sleeping because one, my mind, and two, adrenaline. Yeah. It's such a crazy thing to.
Do you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep?
Falling asleep.
Okay.
That's the one. Once I'm out, I'm fine.
You're out.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But I have trouble falling asleep because my adrenaline spikes so much. After a show, you're trying to come down. Yeah. Or if you got a TV performance the next day or radio, I'm always wow. You know what I mean? I always, it's like a high adrenaline job. So since working out, I'm at 9 o'clock, I'm thank God. You know what I mean? I was I think my body just needs to recover. It's more animalistic than needing to sleep. My body's I've got muscles to repair.
We know it's coming.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it kind of, my body takes over my head and just allows me to we need to sleep now.
You mentioned the ice bath. Do you do the ice bath?
Dude, freak me out.
You don't do it?
I did do it for a bit. Are they good? I know the jury's out on them. That's a good question.
So
sorry,
it depends on
comment section's going to be
interesting question, and we actually have done some recent research on this. We had published what's called a meta-analysis. It is actually bad for muscle growth. Strength and muscle growth actually are decreased because the problem with cold baths, when you have very cold temperatures, is that they restrict the blood vessels, which are required for recovery, for healing. It's nutrient delivery. Now, this is if you're doing it after resistance training. If you're doing it just in general, like if your goal does not include muscle growth, then it's probably going to be fine. Now, again, it depends upon how often you're doing them, when you're doing them. So there's a lot of nuances with this, but I would just say if the goal is maximal strength and hypertrophy, you're probably best off. I'm not saying if you did one every, infrequently, it's going to matter.
I didn't like them. I mean, they were fun. They were fun, and they're the best hangover cure ever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you're hungover, just jump in an ice bath and you're fine.
Yeah.
But like, I would find after training, I was like, they didn't like help me.
Takes the joy out.
Yeah, it's fully just like 10 minutes to go and you're just staring at the ice
10
bath.
minutes?
Like, no, like literally you got like your training session and you're just in the corner like a sleep paralysis demon, just been like, coming for you.
Yeah.
At the end of the workout, you're like, oh no.
Well, the funny thing is they talk about them as a recovery aid, but if you're going to reduce blood flow to the tissue, that's involved in recovery. So it's kind of counterintuitive.
Well, I can't thank you both enough.
Guys, thank you. I loved it.
Pleasure,
honestly, thank you so much.
Great to meet
This
you,
was so fun.
Terrific. Thank you, Brad. Awesome.
Pleasure.
Great.
Epic. That was so sick.
Be sure to check out Yungblud's latest album, Idols, out everywhere on June 20th. You can also catch him live on tour in support of the album. For dates, please visit his website, youngbloodofficial.com. To learn more about Brad's work and stay up to date with his public appearances, you can follow him on Instagram at Brad Schoenfeld, PhD. Sing for Science is co-produced by Talkhouse and made possible in part by a grant from the Simons Foundation. Our music is by Panoram. Social media manager is Bailey Constas. Digital producer is Keenan Cush, and our location recording was provided by Mo Bites Media. Special thanks to Mark Sprung and Rhiannon Rogers at Church Street Boxing, Richard Relkin at Lehman College, and the Flynn Brewers for their help making today's episode possible. If you like Sing for Science, the best way you can support us is to give us a review, tell a friend about the show, and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. For more information, please visit singforscience.org and follow us on social media at Sing for Science. Thanks for listening.